It must be, yeah. Normally I'd be begging for an adjournment with this amount of time to prep as well. Yeah, even in the world of public defenders, we get a little bit longer than this, but okay. No, I just want to make sure you and I have a chance to run through it. So possibly speaking, what else is wrong? All right. So let's just physically think about this. Who was driving?
I was.
Okay. Sit down. So your right hand struck me in the right cheek.
Yes.
So presumably, if we're arguing, we're both looking at each other.
Right.
So I mean that would be consistent with your good old backhand. Right. In the realm of flailing arms, it's a reasonable defense, but I don't think that you ever even admitted to making physical contact.
That's the only thing in here about hands not under contact.
In an assaultive manner.
Right.
It's a very police way of saying it when they're rephrasing what Romano had said. So for example, in a police report, I highly bet that Mr. Romano never said, I didn't touch her in an assaultive manner.
Right.
It's like, I didn't hit the bitch. Like, that's probably, you know what I mean? More
Right.
like what he'd actually said, but you guys most often aren't going to write. Absolutely have fun. So those would be one of the points that we kind of use after what an officer said, just for general.
Okay. You guys are fun at testifying too.
Well, you know what, in a domestic violence case, almost always.
Yeah.
Unless the complaining witness does such a bad job, the victim, on the way the trial works is the people put their witnesses on first.
Right.
And then there will be motions to say, the defense should win here. You just heard the people's only witness. You have incredible testimony. There's nothing for, this case. Deny a lot of times. But you can always make an assessment basically at halftime.
Okay.
Of do we want to put our defendant on or not? In most DP cases, practically speaking, the defendant does end up testifying, but that's nobody else's.
Right. So like what kind of questions is that? Is that just kind of like
For me,
yeah, like basically
establishing your version of defense as to what
and
happened.
that's where we're just gonna go with the whole
March through open questions.
okay.
So, in your own words, what happened on the day of October 24th?
Okay.
And I can make it more specific. Like, what do you mean?
I got that
We're
like
the
the background.
girlfriend together, yes.
Yeah.
We'll kind of lay a little bit of background, because
Okay.
you have to lay a little bit of a foundation.
Now how would we go about like the whole like not placing gangs on stuff like that?
Feel like, did you
Like,
ever?
now we do like the more like defense kind of mechanism thing where like we were, I don't know if I made contact with the kind of people.
Nope, I'm not seeing. So we haven't read all the reports. We got 3 of them. Let me just make sure that we didn't see them here.
No, I don't think so. I think that's
nowhere-
just arrests.
So really, this is
The only thing.
out of this one. Okay.
I don't remember them talking to me. I think they split up in groups of 2.
So you still haven't made any.
Right.
Now, none of you were involved in the group that started it.
No. So you're for sure, dog. Nichols.
Academic, like, right, I mean, I think we're gonna skip that. Like, here's, like, yeah, me, that's what I mean, I'm not.
You got the time, so the rest of the class is supposed to be till 1, which is in 12 minutes.
Yeah, because I was like, for admissibility of all. Sure. But I think all exhibits we can sit to. Move and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've got just maybe a few drafts.
That's. That would be your testimony. I mean.
Okay.
Pulling facial hair. Let's read the last real quick. The other one looked more mature. No, I was looking to see one of them like oh, yeah, somehow. Bad lotion. Exactly. So these photos. I'm gonna add. We can make a reasonable inference. I'm not supposed to just create that. But she's wearing them in the picture taken by the on-duty inspector. I'm presuming that she was on her way to school and didn't just put glasses on for the sake of her picture.
Right.
So logically, she would have had those on and struck her face in such a way that the red mark. I think
Huh?
Each row. A report. Yeah. Yeah, that was not good. Yeah. You make the row. Yeah, that's what but I know that.
All right, good sir. Do you have any questions? I think the only admission of yeah. Come through these one at a time. So this, I think, is all of our, what is this? Hey, Angela. All right. So let's just kind of go back. to this. There's nothing else we missed. So some of the questions, because you are going to take us, I think let's just do that. To the exercise.
Okay.
Some of the questions I'm going to ask you are going to be to mitigate some of the damaging things that happen. So for example, say you had police contact or walk me through what happened when the police approached you in the park. And then don't feel like you got to go on for too long of a story. I'll keep popping in, you know what I mean, with my report and asking you like the next question. So think of it almost like signposts of the story. You don't have to give me the whole narrative. Give me a couple of sentences. So I'd say, hey, I think you know what we're here for today. What happened on October 24th, 2022 in the parking lot of school?
Normalize it, the group, dropping my girlfriend off at college, so that went to each part of the job. Verbal altercations.
What? No, don't get too thrown off. I jump in. So you guys got into a verbal altercation. What was verbal altercation?
So she told me last night that I could use your car today to go to a job interview, as far as getting to school today.
Was there anything else going on between you guys at that point that she was upset with you about?
She was upset that we did get to school a little bit late, and then the night before we got into an argument because we did.
So just to get clear, the night before you guys were in the parking lot together, the incidents that led up to this, you had a fight previously. Is that what you're saying? Was that verbal?
Yes, sir.
You guys fight often?
I'm gonna say we fight often, but we do get
Have you at any point in time ever hit or touched her in any harmful or unwanted ways? So I'm gonna ask you some questions.
Okay, everybody here.
So that pivoting and giving you the opportunity to tell a jury, why the hell you defend my girlfriend screaming at me? And next thing you know, so as long as you can tell me that, like, I'm the one who fears justice. The victim is, she won't stand high because she's me ruin my life now. Because this is pretty much it. Okay. Nothing. I think, I don't know if this works. I think we might either have to extra.
No, there's four reports.
I think I got 4. So I think,
Oh, did I give you, oh, that's because you said you didn't have 3, so I gave you 3 and then you found 3.
so that's what it was. Okay, so that, I'll use it for scratch paper. Save the trees.
Well, I gave the other one to the chief because I don't know what you keep saving those or whatever, so there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I gave you those facts. We don't.
All rise. Report this report for the city of Rhinebeck town session. I will Judge Brian Oakley presiding.
Good afternoon, have a seat. Are we ready on the People versus Romano?
People are ready, Your Honor.
Did I get the name right?
Yes, you did, Your Honor.
Let's get started.
Defense is also prepared to proceed.
All right, let's get started.
You want to hear?
Sure.
Just people to hear. Angela Mandarino on behalf of the people.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Attorney Josh Hadley appearing on behalf of defendants, Nicholas Romano.
Any openings?
Your Honor, will be opening.
Yeah, we'll give a brief opening. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Thank you kindly for taking the time to come in. Can't emphasize, and the court can't emphasize enough how important the job is. It's not like you see on television. This is going to be a little bit of a different proceedings. It's going to be facts. You're going to be presented with facts. It's your job to evaluate these facts and determine if they're believable. And when you hear people giving conflicting testimony, it's going to be your job to evaluate the witnesses giving. In fact, all testimony should be evaluated, guys. You should look at it and try to figure out, because you are the backside of these proceedings, to make sure what's being said is believable and true. So we can ask you to go through this today, think reasonably, think with an open mind, and at the end of the day, you have to follow your hearts and your mind. The judge will instruct you in the law. He's going to tell you what you need to find, what defines you guilty, what you're not. At the end of the day, the facts, what's true, what's not true, what's believable. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hadley. Witness?
Your Honor, the people call Sierra White.
Ms. White.
Raise your right hand.
Swear affirm to tell the truth.
Swear to tell the truth or something close. Let's see right here, watch your step on that.
Ms. Manarino, you're a witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. White, can you state your name for the record, please?
Sierra White.
Ms. White, I want to draw your attention to the morning of October 24th of 2022. Approximately 10:10 a.m. Do you recall where you were?
Yes, I was at school.
And where's school?
It's Schoolcraft College. Industrial.
And is that located within the city of Livonia?
Yes.
Are you a student there?
Yes.
While you were at school that morning, was there something that happened that caused you to have contact with the police?
Yes,
Were you the one that called the police?
I was not.
Were you involved somehow in the incident that caused the police to be at your school?
Yes,
Was there anyone else involved in that incident with you?
yes.
Who?
Nicholas Romano
What is your relationship to Mr. Romano?
is my boyfriend.
On October 24th, was he your boyfriend?
Yes,
Are you still in a relationship with Mr. Romano?
Yes.
Do you see Mr. Romano present in the courtroom this morning?
I do.
Can you identify him for the record and what he's wearing?
He's wearing a blue shirt with a white tie.
Your Honor, let the record reflect the witnesses identify the defendant.
So noted. It's a lovely shirt, by the way, Mr. Romano.
Thanks.
I was immediately taken with the color when I first saw it.
Ms. White, when you were at school on the morning of October 24th, before the police arrived, what, if anything, occurred between you and Mr. Romero?
We had been arguing, and during the argument, he struck me back of his right hand.
What were you arguing about that morning?
The night before, he had gone to the strip club with his friends. He came home smelling like perfume. We argued. We went to bed angry. When we woke up, we continued arguing. We argued on the way to school. I told him that he could no longer use my car to go to a job interview. Made him angry. He struck me, and we were still arguing when the police showed up.
When Mr. Romano struck you, where were you at?
I was in the passenger seat.
And that is the vehicle that you own? And he was seated where?
In the driver's seat.
And he struck you how?
He backhanded me with his right hand, right side of his face.
As a result of him striking you, did you have any injuries?
Just red.
Just what?
Redness.
Did anyone take any photographs or document that? May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Absolutely.
Ms. White, I'm showing you two photographs that I've marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 1. Have you seen those photographs before?
Yes.
Who's depicted in those photographs?
My phone.
Do those photographs accurately represent your face in the morning of October 24th after you were struck by the defendant?
Yes.
And as you indicated, there's some redness on your cheek.
Yes.
Did you have any other injuries?
No.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admission of People's Exhibit 1.
Mr. Hadley,
No objections, Your Honor.
that'll come in. Thank you for the stipulation.
When you were in that vehicle with Mr. Romano, you indicated that you were arguing about him taking your vehicle.
That was one of the reasons, yeah.
What else were you arguing about?
I was still angry with him for his actions the night before, going to the strip club with his friends, coming home smelling like perfume.
So when he went to the strip club the evening before, you were upset with him.
I'm sorry.
When he went to the strip club the evening before, you were upset? Before he went to the strip club, did you have any arguments? So in the morning, you're arguing about him taking your vehicle and the fact that he had been at the strip club the evening before. Anything else that you were arguing about?
I was also late for school.
Did you attribute the fact that you were late to school to Mr. Romano?
I did.
Why?
Because we were arguing the whole morning. It kind of got in the way of getting in the car and going to school.
When you were in the vehicle with Mr. Romano that morning before he struck you in the face, what was his demeanor?
He was angry.
How was he expressing that anger?
He was yelling, moving his hands around.
What types of things was he yelling?
Lots of profanities, saying how he's allowed to go out with his friends. He wasn't the reason.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
The statement made by the defendant?
I'll overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Other than those statements you testified, did you recall him saying anything else that morning?
He did say that he was going to take my car, even though I didn't want him to.
Immediately before he struck you in the face, did he make any statements?
He said, I'm taking the fucking car, and then he struck me.
Prior to this incident, had your relationship with Mr. Romano ever been physical like this? Was the level of anger that he displayed that morning in your vehicle while you were going to school more than what he'd expressed in the past?
Yes.
Anything further for this witness?
Mr. Hadley,
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, you just testified that you'd had a fight the night before, correct?
Yeah, I get the night before, yes.
Okay, about what time of night was this fight the night before?
He got home around midnight.
And you stated to police that he, smelled, reeked of perfume, correct?
So
And smelled like perfume because he'd been at the strip club that night.
I'm sorry.
And he smelled like perfume because he'd been to the strip club that night, correct? That's what the fight had kind of
Yeah.
exploded over. Now, you just also testified that you had other reasons to be mad at him that morning, correct? And you stated that one of these other reasons because he caused you to be late for school, correct? Again, he was borrowing your car to go to a job interview or whatever he told you. You're pretty mad about that as well, right? Now, it's true that just the two of you were the only two people in the car, correct? So nobody else saw the argument that took place between the two of you, correct?
Someone called the police, so I assume someone saw it.
But you don't know who called the police. Did the police tell you that anybody had seen what happened inside the car?
They did not.
But the police did come up to the car, correct? And you were quite upset when the police approached the car too, weren't you?
I was still upset with Mr. Romano.
And you were displaying that you were emotionally upset by being very loud, correct? And you were using profanity and screaming and yelling at the defendant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You've testified as well today that this is the one and the only time you've ever alleged that he's been physical with you before, correct? But you stated that you guys have been on pretty rocky ground, having a lot of fights, correct? You also testified today that there was some redness to your cheek, correct? Okay. And we saw some photos that are in front of you that have been admitted into evidence, correct? Okay. I know that you wear glasses in the photos. You wear glasses when you go to school for studying, or do you wear them all the time?
I go back and forth between contacts and glasses.
Okay. Were you wearing the glasses when this happened?
I was.
Okay. And just to be clear again, no statements in the police report referred, let me back that, strike that question.
Stricken.
When did these photos, when were they taken of you? I think you previously testified right after this incident had happened, correct? Okay. Once you and the defendant both been pulled out of the car, you didn't calm down right away either, did you?
No.
And just to clarify, when the defendant, as you've alleged, he struck you with his right hand in your right cheek, correct? Okay, and you guys were in a Ford F-150, correct? All right. So you would have been sitting facing forward, facing towards him. You're facing him, okay. And how long would you say, again, strike that? It's true that after he allegedly had made contact with your face or struck you, you didn't get out of the car, correct? You stayed right in the truck? Okay. I have no further questions this time.
Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Ms. White, did you give permission to Mr. Amato at any time to strike him in the face?
Any recross, Mr. Hadley?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Ms. White, you can step down, watch your step on the ramp. Next witness from the people.
Your Honor, can people call Officer Nelson?
Give me just a second, counsel.
Swear or affirm to tell the truth or something entertaining. Have a seat right there.
Is it down all the way?
No, I want it to come in the, yeah.
I don't think it'll go down.
No, I don't know if it's the middle.
Sorry.
It's okay. I can, it's fine. Officer Nelson, can you state your name for the record, please?
Officer Nelson,
Are you employed?
yes,
Where?
school board college, police department.
What do you do there?
I'm a police officer,
How long have you been self-employed?
past 4 months.
Were you on duty in the morning of October 24th, 2022?
I was,
at approximately 10 a.m. were you dispatched on a call?
I was.
Did you respond to that call?
I did.
What was the nature of that call?
Two subjects fighting in the rear of the parking lot.
Was there, were you given a location of that call?
Yeah, 31777 Industrial Road in Livonia, Michigan.
Did you respond to that call?
I did.
When you arrived, what did you observe?
We arrived on scene, me and Officer Adkins. Our backup was Officer Argyres and Officer Beckman. When we exited our patrol vehicles, we could hear loud yelling coming from the parking lot.
Okay, I want to stop you there. Were you and Officer Atkins in the same vehicle?
Yes,
And did Officer Argyres and Officer Beckman arrive in another vehicle?
yes,
You testified that you could hear voices, correct?
yes,
Those were coming from the vehicle?
yes.
Could you tell if those were male or female voices?
I had one male, one female.
Were you able to make out what was being said by either of those voices?
Lots of profanities. It was extremely loud. I couldn't distinctly remember exactly what they said, but there were a lot of profanities being said in the vehicle.
So after you arrive on scene and make that observation, do you take any action?
Yep, we approached the vehicle. I approached on the passenger side with Officer Argyres, and Officer Adkins and Officer Beckman approached the driver's side.
When you arrived at the passenger side of that vehicle, was there anyone seated in the passenger side?
Yes, there was.
And who was that?
Miss White.
Was there anyone seated in the driver's side of that
Yeah.
vehicle?
Yes, there was.
Who was that?
Mr. Romano.
Did you speak with Miss White after you approached the vehicle?
I did.
When you approached the vehicle, did you have Miss White do anything to get you out of the vehicle?
At first, we tried to talk to her. I asked her for her identification to verify who she was, and she was still arguing with Mr. Romano. So we had both of them step out of the vehicle to separate them so that we could have a conversation with each of the parties.
Okay, and where did you take Miss White so that you could speak with her?
I had her step away from the vehicle towards the rear of the building, and I was facing south towards my partner to keep an eye on them.
Did you make any observations about Miss White's physical condition?
She was extremely upset, just was still arguing as we were having her step out of the vehicle. I did observe the redness on her cheek.
And if you look at the photographs in front of you, which were previously admitted as Exhibit 1, does that redness accurately depict what you observed on October 24th?
Yes, it does.
Did you have any contact with Mr. Romano that morning?
Not until the end of our time there.
Did you ask Mr. Romano any questions about what had occurred that morning?
I did not.
During your interview with Miss White, did you make any observations about Mr. Romano's demeanor?
He was aggressive. You could tell that he was angry. He was waving his hands around in the vehicle. And once we had them step out of the vehicle, it was a constant back and forth of yelling between the two of them, even though we had separated them.
Once you separated Miss White and Mr. Romano, how was Miss White's demeanor?
She calmed down a little bit, but once he would start yelling at her from across the parking lot, she would get worked up again.
I have nothing further for this officer.
Mr. Hadley.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir.
And my apologies, I'm speaking, Officer Atkins, correct?
Officer Nelson. sir.
Nelson, I'm sorry. My sincere apologies. Just to make sure I have the right. So as a police officer, you've gone through pretty specific training, correct?
Yes, sir.
And making detailed reports and careful reports, is that safe to say is one of the areas that you've been properly trained on?
Yes.
And what's the purpose of these reports? Why do you make these reports?
Have a record of what happened, who we spoke to. If the incident ends up going to court, that'd be used as evidence.
And can we agree, you don't have to agree, but I'm asking, can we agree that it's quite often that when trials actually happen in cases, it's a significant amount of time from when the actual incident happened, right?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
Unless you're schoolcraft.
Unless you're. But that would be part of the reason it's important, right? I mean, you want to be able to say, hey, this is what I remember from that day.
Yes, sir.
So including details and accurate details would be important,
Yes.
correct? Now, interviewing witnesses, Commissioner McCready.
Oh, absolutely.
So interviewing witnesses would be a very important key part of your job when investing in crimes such as this, correct?
Yes,
And did you do that in this case?
yes.
So which of the two involved parties did you speak to?
I spoke with Ms. White.
Okay. So you never spoke with the defendant?
No.
So you never heard the defendant make any statements about what occurred, you only heard Mrs. White's version of the offense, correct?
Yes, myself, I only heard what Ms. White had to say.
Now, Ms. White um, testified earlier. Did you hear Ms. White's testimony?
Yes, I did.
Now, by your own testimony just a little bit ago, you mentioned that she was also pretty hot that day as well, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Both parties were emotional or acting loudly, boisterously, whatever word we want. They were pretty fired up, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you ever see Miss White make any physical movements towards the defendant?
I did not.
You never saw the defendant make any physical movements towards Miss White?
No, I did not.
So we discussed these pictures that came into evidence. They're conveniently still sitting right in front of you. Now, you were on scene. You're aware that the evidence tech took these, correct?
Yes.
Can you kind of describe what the injuries look like for us a little bit in your, experience as an officer? I mean, just not what you think caused it, but what's it look like?
Well, she has redness on her cheek. Based on my experience, that does reflect a possible slap to the face.
Okay, and again, I'm not asking for your conclusions, what you think might have caused, just to describe it. It's, you said red, kind of blotchy, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in a case where really the only evidence that we've heard would be what the two-party statements were about what occurred inside the truck, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this picture was taken right afterwards and it shows a red cheek, correct?
Yes.
All right. You guys take any pictures of the defendant's hands?
Our evidence technician did take pictures of the hands.
Okay, and have pictures of those. Is there any reason that you guys didn't submit those as evidence today?
I'm unaware, sir.
I understand sometimes chain of custody evidence is something beyond, but I just want to make sure that, if you knew why we didn't have pictures. Okay. You're aware from speaking to Ms. White that she had kind of a rocky relationship with the defendant.
Yes.
Back fighting about them going to the strip clubs, money, smell like perfume, driving her car around. So it's fair to say she had, I think, anybody with a pretty good motive to be mad at him or angry with him.
Yes, and she was.
Did you notice any damage to the glasses that she's wearing in that picture?
I did not.
Okay. We just have a few more questions for you. I appreciate you working with me on this one. There was never any report of Ms. White exiting the vehicle prior to you guys approaching, right? You heard them arguing, you guys came up, she was still sitting in the vehicle, right?
Yes, that's correct.
These pictures that you see here, we've all agreed it's kind of a red blotchy cheek. In a case, again, where the only real evidence that we've heard was the statements about what happened, don't you think it would have been really important to see what her cheek looked like maybe hours later after the alleged assault?
Yes, I can see that.
We had those pictures today. It would be a lot easier for us to get to the bottom of maybe really what caused a red cheek at that moment.
That's
Like
fair to say.
bruising, the kind of things that would normally be associated with something that might cause a red cheek. That would have been evident in pictures if they'd been followed up with, right?
Yeah.
But there was no medical reports or follow-up pictures or anything done on this, correct?
No, there was not.
We have no further questions. Your Honor.
Officer Johnson, after you were done with your investigation that morning, do you know where Miss White, did she leave the scene?
She stayed at school. We left the car with her and she stayed at school that day.
Do you know if she had class that morning?
She did.
Based on your training and experience, is it typical that you would follow up with the witness who has somewhat minor injuries like you see depicted in that photograph to assess their injuries several hours later?
No, it's not physical.
I have nothing for that.
Recross.
One briefly. But just to kind of rehash the testimony we just had, if you were a member of a jury and you were trying to figure out, by looking and weighing the evidence, what caused an injury such as that, we would agree that having follow-up pictures would have been extremely helpful and would have been useful in that, correct?
Yeah, I can understand that.
No further questions, John.
So you can step down. Watch your step.
Your Honor, people call Officer Atkins.
All the way up front.
Commissioner approach briefly.
Sure. She doesn't want to come up here.
I love that part of it. You, she can stay back there. It's better.
Show your.
If I get a mean eye from the chief, I'm gonna speak up. Raise your right hand, answer. Swear firm, tell the truth, or something good.
Yes.
Have a seat right here, watch you step on the ramp.
Miss Manorino, you're a witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, can you state your name for the record, please?
Officer Atkins,
Where are you employed?
with the Schoolcraft Police,
How long have you been a police officer there?
1 year.
Were you on duty the morning of October 24th, 2022?
That's correct.
And are you assigned to work with another officer or do you work alone?
Yes, I'm assigned with Officer Nelson.
And do you and Officer Nelson ride in the same vehicle?
Yes,
At approximately 10:10 a.m. on October 24th, were you and Officer Nelson dispatched on a call?
yes.
What was the nature of that call?
It was a domestic disturbance call in
Do you
the
recall the location of that call?
31777 Industrial Road.
And that's within Livonia?
Yes.
Did you arrive? What did you observe?
I observed a male and a female that were arguing loudly in a gray F-150 in the south parking lot.
Was that consistent with the call that you were dispatched on?
Yes,
Did you approach that vehicle?
yes,
Did you have contact with anyone sitting in that vehicle?
yes.
Who did you have contact with?
The driver, last name Romano, first name Nicholas.
And when you approached the vehicle, Mr. Romano was seated in the driver's seat?
Correct,
And was there someone seated in the passenger seat?
correct.
Who was that?
Sierra White.
Were Mr. Romano and Ms. White still engaging in any sort of argument as you approached the vehicle?
Yes.
Were you able to hear anything that either party was saying?
Not clear enough to make out, just a lot of yelling.
Did you make any observations about the demeanor of either Mr. Romano or Ms. White?
Yes, both very irate.
And what indicated about their demeanor indicated to you that they were irate?
Both were turned towards each other in the vehicle, waving their hands all around and screaming back and forth.
And it was loud enough that you could hear them outside of the vehicle?
Correct.
When you had contact with Mr. Romano, did you interview him while he's seated in the vehicle?
I attempted to, but he was unable to divert his attention away from the argument. So at that point, I had asked him to step out of the vehicle.
And did you take him somewhere away from the vehicle to speak with him?
Yes,
Where?
over to the front of my spot.
And where was that located to, or relative to where Ms. White was speaking with other officers?
Miss White was speaking with Officer Nelson on the west end of the parking lot, the southwest end, and I was on the southeast end where my squad car was parked.
And what did Mr. Romano inform you had occurred that morning?
He said that that morning he needed to borrow Miss White's truck in order to go to a job interview, to which he agreed to let him use the truck as long as he dropped her off at school first. They arrived late, and that's when they started arguing.
Did Mr. Romano give you any information about the type of relationship that he and Ms. White were in?
Yes, they were boyfriend and girlfriend for a year and a half.
And did he indicate if they resided in the same residence or different residences?
Same residence.
Did Mr. Romano give you any information about the reason why they were arguing?
During the morning,
Yes.
just because Ms. White was upset about arriving late to school.
Did Mr. Romano, and Mr. Romano was the one driving the vehicle?
Correct.
Do you know who that vehicle was registered to?
Ms. White.
Did Mr. Romano tell you why he was driving Ms. White to school?
Yes, because he doesn't have his own vehicle and he had asked to borrow hers to go to that job interview. But she said that she needed a ride to school, and then once he dropped her off, he could take it.
Did Mr. Romano tell you anything else that they were arguing about other than the vehicle?
That morning,
Did he tell you about any other arguments they had had?
he did tell me about an argument the previous night when he came home from the strip club. He said that Ms. White was upset of him smelling of perfume. And he said again, that was just another verbal argument, nothing got physical.
And Mr. Romano's version of events when he related to you was that there was nothing physical the morning of October 24th.
That was his version, yes.
Did you make any observations about his physical condition that morning?
He seemed normal.
Did he have any marks or injuries on his person that you were able to see?
He did not.
Were you able to view Mr. Romano's hands as you were speaking with him?
Yes,
Did you observe anything on his hands that indicated that he had been in any sort of, that there was any injuries?
I did not.
Were you able to make observations about Ms. White's physical condition that morning?
I was.
The pictures that are in front of you on the counter, do those accurately reflect her physical condition on October 24th when you contacted her?
They're consistent, yep.
At the time that you were interviewing Mr. Romano, were you aware of any allegations that the disagreement between Ms. White and Mr. Romano had turned physical?
I was not aware at the time of my interview with him, no.
So you didn't ask Mr. Romano any questions about physical altercation?
I did ask if it had gotten physical this morning, and he again said, no, it was just verbal.
I have nothing further for Officer Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Hadley.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah.
So I'm going to run through a couple real preliminary questions, kind of just basic background for your training and what's that. How long have you been an officer for approximately?
1 year.
Okay. And you went through extensive training before becoming an officer.
That's correct.
And keeping detailed specific reports, that's part of that?
That's correct.
Okay. And taking accurate witness statements, that's part of that as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you previously stated that you spoke with the defendant like, right after he'd been taken out of the truck, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And he denied ever hitting Ms. White, correct?
That's what he said.
Okay. That's what he said. Okay. Did you press him on the issue? Did you keep asking him any follow-up questions, or was that pretty much the extent of your questioning about the?
I did try to get him further about their relationship, but throughout my interview with him, he kept turning around, screaming various profanities like I can't recall exactly at this time, towards White, and it was distracting her from the interview.
Okay.
So I
You're-
couldn't get very far.
And you made a police report for this incident, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it would be if we needed to refer back to it today, the date and time for the trial, that you'd have an accurate, memory of exactly what was said and exactly what happened, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You didn't do that in this case, correct? Mr. Romano made statements to you, but you didn't include a witness statement or his specific words, right?
No, I did not.
Okay. In fact, you used some, what I would consider maybe police type of language. You stated that Romano stated he had never placed his hands on White in an assaultive manner.
That's correct.
Okay, so those are your words, right? That's not what he stated to you.
Correct.
Okay. So how long would you say approximately you interviewed my client?
If I had to guess, I'd say about 3 minutes.
Okay. A lot can be said in 3 minutes, right? Probably heard people confess to crimes in a much shorter period of time than that, right?
Yep.
Okay. So 3 minutes of discussion between you and my client went on back and forth. You mentioned that there was some yelling going on, correct? He was still hot.
Yes.
Ms. White sounded like she was also still really fired up.
Yes. He was agitating her further.
Okay, so he was agitating her by what?
by yelling.
Okay, so
Turning
just by
around.
verbally yelling back and forth, she continued to escalate even in the presence of police. She was still responding aggressively as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I want to go back to the fact that we're talking about, what was really said, what really happened there that day. You mentioned just a moment ago that my client never said assaultive manner. That's not really what he stated. He just told you in his own words kind of what happened, and you paraphrased.
Yes.
What other statements that you took that day have been paraphrased or maybe kind of changed from what actually was stated?
None that I can recall.
None that you can recall. Okay. But it's quite possible that, again, because it's sort of a summary of what other statements were made, that there could be.
There could be some paraphrasing in there.
Sure. And with paraphrasing, just like the telephone game, sometimes things get a little bit misconstrued or changed a little bit as it moves on, right?
Sure.
Okay. You just also testified previously that you saw no injuries on my client's hands, right?
Correct.
And you mentioned that you saw both parties, once police were there, both parties in the presence of police, both of them were still kind of waving hands around, correct? All right. Just a couple factual points. So you guys stated you could hear arguing when you approached, correct?
Correct.
From 50 feet away.
Correct.
Two people,
That's correct.
so they were both were really loud if you heard both, correct?
Yes.
All right, so kind of pretty heated. And I just want to clarify again, did you ever take any statements from Ms. White about what her version of the events were?
I did not. I got all my information from White's interview from Officer Nelson.
In your line of work, have you ever seen somebody or come upon a case, you've been doing this for a year, where someone's struck accidentally, where contact is made without like an intentional motive to do so? You ever come across any cases like that?
I have not personally, no.
Not a single one. Okay. So anytime anybody makes contact with somebody with their hand, then they must have meant to do it. It's what your experience has taught you.
Yeah.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
I have nothing further to this witness.
Officer Atkins, you can step down, watch your step.
Officer Argyris?
Common spelling, of course.
Yes, of course.
Give me 1 second. Which one are you on to?
Argyris. Is number 1.
Okay.
Officer, come up front. Raise your right hand. Swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Have a seat. Pressure's on you.
Officer, can you state your name for the record, please?
Joachim Constantinos Argyris,
Got all that, Judge?
All common spelling.
Officer Argyris, where are you employed?
Schoolcraft.
What do you do there?
I'm a police officer.
How long have you been a police officer?
1 year.
Were you on duty on the morning of October 24th, 2022?
I was.
At approximately 10:20 a.m., were you dispatched on a call?
Yes.
What was the nature of that call?
2 individuals on the behind the Wayne County Regional Police Academy arguing in a truck.
Did you respond to that call?
Yes, I did.
Did anyone else respond with you?
Officer Atkins, Officer Nelson, and my partner, Officer Beckman.
Did Officer Atkins and Officer Nelson arrive at the same time that you did?
A little bit before us.
Did Officer Beckman arrive with you?
Yes.
And you said that Officer Beckman is your partner. Do you ride in the same car?
Yes.
When you arrived at the scene, what did you observe?
I heard 2 individuals yelling loudly from a gray Ford, but I kind of observed the vehicle on the south side of the parking lot. I approached.
And you said that it was 2 people that you heard yelling in the vehicle?
Yep.
How could you tell it was 2?
Just heard the back and forth, just 2 individuals, 1 female, 1 male.
And at the time that you heard the yelling in the vehicle, approximately how far from the vehicle were you?
Excess of 50 to 60 feet.
Fair to say it was relatively loud.
Yes.
And you approached that vehicle?
Yes,
Were there a male and female in the vehicle?
there was.
Where was the male located in the vehicle?
Driver's side.
In the driver's seat or just on the driver's side?
Driver's seat,
And where was the female located?
passenger seat.
Did you have occasion to talk to either the passenger or the driver?
I talked to the passenger briefly.
Did you speak with the driver at all?
No, I don't think I did.
During the time that you were speaking with the female, where was the male?
The male was separated rough, like excess of 50 feet from us. He was outside in the parking lot.
Was he speaking with other officers?
Yeah, he was speaking to Officer Atkins and Officer Beckman.
Do you see the male that was present at this incident in the courtroom this morning?
Yeah, he's sitting over here at the defendant's table.
Can you identify what he's wearing?
He is wearing a light blue shirt and a white tie.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you make any observations about the physical condition of the female, Ms. White?
Yeah, she had a red bruise on her right cheek.
And did you do anything to document that injury?
I took a photograph of it.
The photographs that are in front of you, which were previously admitted as Exhibit 1, are those the photographs that you're referencing?
Yes, ma'am.
And you took those?
Yep, with the department issued camera.
Sure.
Now, I noticed, Officer Argyris, that you took a picture so that you can clearly see the one side of her face. Did you take a photograph to document the left side of Ms. White's face?
I did not.
Did you observe the left side of Ms. White's face to be as red as the right side of her face?
No, I did not.
So the right side was redder than the left side.
That's correct.
So it wasn't just that she was flustered and her face was flushed, it was concentrated on one side, is that right?
That's correct.
During the time that you were interviewing Ms. White, were you able to hear and see Mr. Romano?
I was, yeah, for officer safety reasons. I wanted to keep an eye on the other two officers across the parking lot from us.
And how did you observe Mr. Romano to be behaving during the time that you were interviewing Ms. White?
A few times he did yell some type of obscenity at Miss White. I can really make out what to be. I cannot recall that, but he did yell from her. He did yell at her across the parking lot.
And how was his demeanor while he was yelling at her?
Loud, aggressive.
I have nothing further for this witness.
Mr. Adler.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
You previously testified that you or the officer who took the pictures, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you receive any training in advance of becoming an officer about how to properly document evidence and take photos?
As an evidence technician, yes.
Okay. And would you say that you followed the training that you were given that day?
Yes, I did.
Okay. You just previously testified that you did observe both sides of the face, but you didn't include photographs of the other side of the face, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So we don't have any evidence other than your testimony as to whether or not both sides of her face were flush and pink, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you previously just testified on direct that you could hear arguing, screaming right inside the truck.
That's correct.
You previously testified that you hear that from about 50 to 60 feet away.
Excess 50 to 60 feet.
Okay, so excess of something could mean anything more than that, right?
Correct.
Okay. So would you say that what was in your report the day that this happened would have been more accurate than what you can recall today?
Yep.
Okay. And what is your testimony today of approximately how far away do you think you were when the argument, you could hear it?
I want to say roughly 70 feet, roughly.
So you don't recall exactly?
No, I do not recall.
I mean, we're talking 15, 20 feet. That's, I mean, significant distance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So it's a fact that you can't recall from memory completely accurate. We can agree on that, correct?
Well, we can agree on that. Yes.
Okay. So it's possible then that there's other facts from that day previously that you don't recall accurately. I think just testified to that, you'd agree to that, right?
Sure.
Okay. So with that being said, don't you think it would be extremely useful in this situation if we would have had these photographs of the other side of her face to show what the condition of it actually was?
Yeah, it would have.
Okay. Now you, in your report we were just talking about, you did approach the car and you were in pretty close proximity to both my client and the complaining witness, Ms. White, right?
I was on the passenger side of the vehicle. I
You're on the-
approached with Officer Nelson.
Okay. And in your report, you remember testifying that you, what occurred during your initial contact? You guys came up to the car.
What had occurred is Officer Nelson requested identification from Miss White. However, Mr. Romano was asked to exit the vehicle. He complied with the order because they were arguing, and this was kind of interfering with their ability to investigate the situation.
Isn't it true that in your report that you stated during our initial contact, pretty much the first thing that happened, you walked up, and it wasn't just yourself, right? You were with other officers.
Correct.
Okay. So during your initial contact, you're standing next to the car. So Miss White and my client can see you, right? They know you're there.
Correct.
You saw with Miss White hunched onto the center console, making eye contact with Romano, Atkins, and Beckman, yelling, "You're not taking the fucking car."
That's correct.
Okay, so she was irate, even though you guys were right there. She's screaming, yelling. That's the first thing you see.
First thing I saw was.
First thing you put in your report. Again, we try to point out sometimes everything that we make.
That's correct.
So it's been established that these guys, my client and Miss White were in a dating relationship. Everybody's aware of that. You guys had some conversations, it looks like well, let me back it up. Did you interview my client?
At no point, no.
Okay. So the only evidence really that we would have been of an alleged assault is half of a face and the complaining witness's statement. We would agree on that at this point.
That's correct.
Okay, no further questions.
Officer Rodriguez, at the time that you were taking the photograph of Miss White's face, what was the purpose for that?
Well, it was to document an injury.
So when you're documenting injuries, you're not taking pictures of areas that are not injured.
And that's correct. And I did ask her if she was injured in any other place.
And the
That
face was the only place that you photographed.
Officer Nelson had asked her if there's any other place. That was it.
And so that's the reason why the only area that you documented was her face.
And that's
And
correct.
specifically the cheek.
And she had told us, she had pointed to her cheek, her right cheek, and said that Nicholas Romano had backhanded her with his right hand.
Mr. Hanley.
Absolutely, Rita. Thank you, Your Honor. You did take some pictures of my client's hands though, right?
You not have those photos.
It's not my question. You guys took pictures of my client's hands, right?
Yes.
And there was testimony that there was no injuries to the hands, correct?
I'm not sure of that.
1 minute, Your Honor. So previously, you heard the officer, I believe that was officer that went directly before you, officer, testify that there were in fact pictures taken, that you were the person who took these pictures.
That's
of
right.
my client's hands.
Sequestered.
So, okay, so my apologies. So
Rephrase.
witnesses were sequestered.
Rephrase.
Did you take pictures of my client's hands?
Yes.
Okay. And did you see any injuries on my client's hands?
I did not.
Okay. So you just previously testified that under prosecution's questions that you guys don't take pictures of things that aren't injured. That's why we don't have, allegedly, that's why we don't have these missing pictures that would be very helpful at this point. Your guys' position is that you didn't include these missing pictures because you don't take pictures of non-injuries. That was your testimony.
That's correct.
Okay, but you just testified that you took pictures of my client's hands and that there was no injuries on my client's hands, correct?
Took pictures of what he used to hit her with the
I just,
policy
I'm not
procedure.
asking for your theories on what happened. I'm asking about your procedures and your processes of what you take pictures of and what you don't. I don't know why you're fighting me on this. Did you take the pictures or not? It's a pretty straight
Yes, I
question.
took the pictures.
Okay. And his hands weren't injured.
No, they were not injured.
Okay, so it's true, despite what you just testified about, that you guys do sometimes take pictures of body parts that aren't injured.
Correct.
Okay, no further questions.
Officer, is there a reason why you documented?
No,
Done? I gotta try that.
no, I don't blame you.
I had to make my objection, just by holding up how many times we've gone.
Officer Jerry should have said, watch your step on the.
Thank you, officer.
One last minute, Officer Beckman.
That would have just done it.
Officer Beckman, all the way up front, please. Raise your right hand. Swear to tell us a story.
Officer Beckman, can you state your name for the record, please?
Officer Kristen Beckman,
Where are you employed?
Schoolcraft College Police,
What do you do there?
I'm a police officer,
And how long have you been so employed?
1 year.
Were you on duty the morning of October 24th, 2022?
Yes, it was.
At approximately 10:10 in the morning, were you working?
Yes,
Were you dispatched on a call?
yes.
What was the nature of that call?
It was described as domestic violence.
Did you respond to that?
Yes,
What was the location of the call?
rear of the building,
Of the building where?
of the college.
And you responded to that, correct?
Yes.
When you arrived, what did you observe?
I observed a gray Ford pickup truck, and I could hear loud arguing from inside.
And that was consistent with the nature of the call.
Yes.
Based on your observation of that pickup truck, did you take any action?
Me personally, no.
What did you do?
I stood by as backup to the primary officers.
So there were other officers on scene.
Yes,
And those were Officers Beckman, Atkins, and Argyris that we've heard testimony from this morning.
yes,
Other than the 4 officers that you and the other 3 officers, were there any other officers on scene?
no.
Did you interview either Mr. Romano or Ms. White?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Did you?
I was present for most of the interview with Mr. Romano.
And Mr. Romano, was he the male in that vehicle that was in the parking lot?
Yes,
And who was the officer who interviewed Mr. Romano?
Officer Atkins.
During the time that Mr. Romano was being interviewed, were you able to see him clearly?
Yes,
Do you see him present in the courtroom today?
yes.
Can you identify what he's wearing?
Teal shirt.
Isn't that a beautiful color? You have to answer the judge.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the court can ask questions. Did you ask Mr. Romano any questions during that interview?
I don't recall that I did.
If you did, is that something that you would have documented in a police report that you prepared on this matter?
Absolutely.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Sure.
Officer Beckman, in handing you the police report that you prepared in this matter, if you review that, does it refresh your recollection as to whether you questioned Officer Romano at all?
I see it there. I interviewed him as well. I don't recall asking him any questions myself now.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Were you able to hear during the time the officer was interviewing Mr. Romano, his recounting of the incident that had happened prior to the police arriving?
Yes,
Do you recall what he had explained?
yes.
What was that?
He explained that they were just having an argument
They argue sometimes, they argue the night before, and that nothing physical occurred.
Did Mr. Romano volunteer that piece of information that nothing physical had occurred, or was that in response to a question from the officer interviewing him?
Officer Atkins had asked him.
I have nothing further for this witness.
Mr. Hadley.
Absolutely, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for your time here. I know it's been a long day, but I'll try to move through these quickly for you. I've asked all your fellow officers if they've gone through formal training to become officer. Is it fair to say that you went through the same training all your officers did?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move past that. You were one of the officers who was responsible for looking into what happened this day, right? Once you responded to this call?
Yes.
Okay. And you just testified that you didn't really remember initially from that day whether you spoke with my client or not, correct? You didn't conduct the interview, your partner did, you said?
Correct.
But you didn't really remember this guy at that time speaking to him?
Personally, I do not recall asking him any questions.
No. And I forget a lot of things too. I'm just asking, just want to make sure we've all got the same.
Been
facts
almost
we're
a
working
week.
on. I'm sorry.
Been almost a week.
See? Let's talk about what you guys, we know what you did do, right? So you kind of walked us through that. You guys approached the vehicle, you guys heard arguing, you kind of interjected as law officers at that time, right?
Yes.
Okay, to investigate and find out what was going on inside the truck. That's- Okay. You guys separated the parties. Would you agree that both parties were pretty emotional and pretty irate at that point in time?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys separate the parties and you do an interview, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then my client, still yelling, gets cuffs tossed on him pretty much, right? That's what happened at that point. He's back and forth with her and he gets put in cuffs at that point, correct?
That's not how I would describe it.
How would you describe it? How did he wind up in handcuffs?
He was not complying with Officer Atkins' direction to stay away from Miss White. So he detained him for safety reasons.
And again, just like previously when you looked over your report, do you believe that that's accurate, what's reflected in your report?
I don't believe I put that detail in there.
Okay. And as we talked about before, you've gone through training extensively, you know the importance of reports and putting in important details, right? Okay. The report did state, though, that my client stated that nothing physical occurred, and it was only a verbal disagreement. You put that in there, okay. So that was an important point. So let's go through it. You guys show up, you interject, you guys separate them. Your interviews are conducted while you guys are kind of like all separated, like you're talking to my client and they're talking to the complaining witness, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you guys are standing in a parking lot basically while yelling is going on back and forth and you interviewed both parties.
I personally did not know.
I'm sorry, strike that. Let me rephrase it in a better way. You and your partner interviewed my client.
My
Correct.
partner did.
Okay. You were present while you.
I was present, that's
Okay.
correct.
You were there, you knew it. Okay. On the other side of it, the other officers were interviewing the complaining witness, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that was the investigation because basically the report jumps from, they were yelling, as you just testified, my client wasn't complying with orders, handcuffs went on, and that was the end of it, right? Okay. Where was this at again?
Schoolcraft College.
You got any cameras?
They do, yes.
Okay, I mean, it's a day and age we live in. I mean, it's kind of hard to believe without a camera. It seems like a parking lot in a school would have cameras. Your police report doesn't mention any steps that you guys took to try to locate any video footage, right?
That's correct.
How about that? Schoolcraft has no cameras? I'll share that with my clients. No, I mean, no. So let's move into, it was a parking lot on a school day though, correct?
Yes, sir.
I think we can infer she wasn't the only person at school that day, so there was lots of other people in and out, right?
I actually didn't observe many other people around.
Okay, but somebody called 911 that we haven't heard from today. We do know that. You guys received a call from dispatch. So somebody heard this. We have no idea who. Your report doesn't mention any attempts that you guys made to locate anybody else who may have actually seen what happened that day, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So would you agree that maybe going out and finding out if somebody else had seen this or trying to find out who else had heard the argument would have been helpful for us to really get to the bottom of what happened here today?
I mean, the evidence seemed pretty clear to us at the time.
So you guys have pretty much reached a conclusion right there on the spot that what you heard from those two involved people who were both emotional, were both screaming and yelling at one another. That was sufficient evidence for you guys to not try to go out and find maybe the corroborating statement from whoever felt important enough to call 911 in the first place.
At that time, we had to do what we had to do with the evidence we had, which was the evidence clear on Miss White's face.
And I understand that, officer. I'm not trying to beat up on you on that. I think it's a tough job to do, but I've got a job to do, and it's just to really get all the evidence and facts and find out what we really know. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
And you redirect.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Also, you can step down, watch your step.
We don't? We have a brief moment to confer with my client.
Is a jurist in a constant state of motion in school too? I went to law school with a guy like that, and we used to call it aerobic standing. Right? I'm watching him, he's standing out there like this. I mean, I need a nap watching him. The jurist, lots of nervous energy? No?
Keep a bail aside on that. Your Honor, I'd like to briefly make my record. My client's been advised of his rights. He would like to go ahead and exert said rights and will voluntarily not be taking a stand today. We would like
You
to,
gonna let him? Okay, come on.
and he will not be taking.
He's not going to.
Absolutely not, Your Honor. This man is innocent until proven guilty. And we would argue at this point it would be appropriate to look for a directed verdict, but we've got a picture here. So let's get to it.
All right. That's not very close.
Can I get mine now?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the evidence in this case is very clear. On October 24th, 2022, the defendant, Mr. Romano, assaulted Ms. White, his girlfriend, who he lives with, by backhanding her across the face while they were seated in the vehicle in the parking lot of the school. Her testimony, they were arguing. The fact is that no amount of verbal arguing justifies what Mr. Romano did, and that is striking her in the face. That is in violation of Michigan law, the domestic violence statute would ask you to find him guilty of that. Thank you.
Mr. Hanley,
I can't promise mine's gonna be quick, that short.
do your best.
I can't emphasize this enough to you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, like the seriousness. This is this man's life. He's been accused of a crime we did not commit. You guys are held with the decision of evaluating and looking at all the evidence that you heard today, and I'm gonna say the most important thing is what you did not hear today. There's all sorts of evidence that you would expect to see in a routine conducted investigation that we kind of heard some quasi sort of beat around the bush answers by not here today. And we've also heard testimony from an officer who said basically after separating two irate people, I mean, come on, I'm not gonna tell you my guy's better than right. He was the strip club, running around with his girlfriend's car, looking for jobs. I mean, he wasn't doing great at this. They were rocky. They were in a tough spot. That's not in dispute. What's in dispute is whether or not he did it. We have to tell you, you have an easy job today because they have a burden. Just like my client has a right to not testify, and you cannot use that as an inference against him. We're all afforded that right here in America. And he's exerted it, and they're stuck with their burden of giving you the evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Meaning that you can't have a reasonable doubt as to an alternate set of events that happened. So what happened? Well, we've heard that there was an argument that somebody felt was significant enough to call the police, who wasn't here today, who no one tried to run down, who no one tried to really get in contact or some first-hand information as to what he or she may have seen. We've seen one half of the face. I'm embarrassed when you can look at my face, and I might be getting red like that right now. I get nervous in front of you. I might be red. And I might be red on both sides of my face. I just gotta tell you, a pink cheek after letting me blast with a backhand, this is the type of thing that you have to weigh as reasonable. Why don't we know what our whole face looks like? Why do we have missing pictures of hands? Why do we have inconsistent testimony about how this evidence is gathered? Does it mean that there wasn't an argument? Everybody's testified. But what we got is the only person who was there, told you what has happened, highly motivated at that point and today, to still rely on emotion and not on what. You can't convict without looking beyond the reasonable doubt. You would simply say evidence is not there. It's not for you to decide what actually happened. It's just for you to decide people give you enough to change my client's life. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you go back into the jury room to deliberate about your verdict in this case, would ask you to look at these photographs. This is not photographs of one side of the face. The photograph, you can see both sides of the face. And you can see how much more noticeable the redness is on the face, the side of the face where Ms. White was struck by Mr. Romano than it is the side where he's not. Beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean beyond all shadow. We have heard a very clear story today about what happened. Photographs support. We've heard enough. That was the fact only we find it. That's the verdict of the case.
Thank you all. All rise for the jury. Oh, you can sit down now.
Your Honor, to note to self, Mary Ellen sent me a text message, my conversation at the council table.
Well, for your benefit, I wasn't listening. Yeah. No. Yeah.
So sorry to deprive you of the chance to get cross-examined by Angela, but yeah, you speak with my point. Where the problem is, and if this was a real trial, I would have hammered on the fact that I'd break myself in here to flag and talk about your rights to not be able to testify, that way. For something like this, that actually but Angela, I was just talking about why I chose not to. I'm getting shredded.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what was coming. Those different police reports, even though it's their version of what you said, at some point you have to commit to one version. So what happened? I think 3 half-assed alternate theories are better than one of this is what happened. So and that's my view. So our theory was, yes, he did it with
On accident, yeah.
that's an argument, but I like the idea better of saying. So I'm sitting this far away from you. I mean, yeah, that's. I realize, I don't know why I asked her. If she could set up. So I actually got a case.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah, for sure.
I don't know where I'm going with this one. So, to me, that's where it's like, adding new effects, and, like, trying to do like reasonable, like. One of the suspects.
Need the sign. I'm gonna pay. I was ready. People got me an extra tray when I get it. I see you got me an extra tray.
Well, we never would have been able to predict anybody before. You gotta have this mystery. You gotta testify. Yeah, I mean, I think that. Should be. Probably better get used to being on the side.
Right, yeah. I'm usually on the other side. I'm usually on the other side of the camera. I usually got.
We got the diversion going on.
Yeah.
Fines and costs. Make it like. Oh my God. I'll tell you that. I think I made actually the DD case I had up in the state of the county that it was a single. I was saying like. If you don't show up, we got this.
Third District Court is now at
Did the jury pick a four-person?
Yes, it's me, Your Honor.
Don't be so shy. What was the verdict of the jury, please?
Us as a jury have found the defendant, Nicholas Romano, not guilty.
If they say guilty, I was gonna say that's what appeals are for, so.
All right, first group out, second group in.
I learned from the officers and victim, the prosecutor, and my suspect coming here.
This is what dude over here. So, have you read this? Do you know? No, I have not read that. Let's do this real quick. So I got this today, so we're gonna do through this quick. You may have taken the stand, you may not. Feel like getting beat up there just to have experience. Feel free. You obviously have every right. All right, from the top. I can't read much of this.
I could probably just because I know someone who needs help, I could probably help them out on the street.
This is you.
Yeah, oh, my name.
So, our victim, Namu.
Yep.
Namu got his backpack boosted allegedly by you. There's the backpack. Take a picture of said backpack right there. Recovered from said backpack appears to be Namu's driver's license, $20 US currency. I just sworn there was something else in there too. In your pocket? Yeah, this is gonna be tough. All right. This is what I call, in our actual practice in this court, let's talk police.
Well, that's what.
So you well, you never know. Let's see what they got. So they were dispatched, well, 9 in the morning. All right, everybody's sober. So we'll find out that's not the case. Oh, yeah. And I don't know if you know anything about like jury instructions, but the prosecution can more or less legally argue that innocent people don't typically take off running. It's bullshit. I don't like it from my side, but it happens. I keep forgetting they don't. I don't know if it's what it is. Make sure these are all from the yeah, these are all from the
Yeah.
It's in, I found it, it's in one of these paragraphs. Yeah, I was like, I started thinking the same thing, I'm like, where the hell? Fines, that one back.
Have a seat.
Hey, give us, Your Honor, 2 minutes? 2 minutes? Give me 2 minutes, I'll keep my opening and closing shorter. basically chief saying. And then we'll argue the law, the elements just have to be necessary because routine wasn't in front of them. That'll be your Yeah, having somebody else's pants on, that you know, where you got them. Back. We're prepared to see whatever prosecution. is. Oh, oh, yeah. Other than-
All rise. For this court back in session now, Judge Ryan.
Have a seat. Appearances on the People versus Jacobs.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Angela Maverick on behalf of the people.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Attorney Josh Chadwick, on behalf of the defendant, Mr. Jacobs.
Are we ready?
People are ready, Your Honor.
Openings briefly.
Briefly, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. This afternoon, you're going to hear from the witnesses in this matter and the victim about Mr. Hughes' backpack that was stolen while he was at school. The contents of that backpack were recovered from Mr. Jacobs, who you will hear testimony about, claims that he never saw it, but yet ended up with Mr. Nader's possession in his pockets. And those items that are in his pockets came from the backpack. Pretty clear how those happened, how it has occurred that Mr. Jacobs came in possession of that backpack, rifled through the backpack for the valuable pieces that were in there, put them in his pockets, and then lied to the officer and told the officer that he had never seen the backpack. When you take another person's property, when you attack someone and deprive that person of the property, that is larceny. And at the end of this trial, I'm going to ask to find Mr. Jacobs guilty of larceny. Thank you.
Mr. Adams.
Thank you, Your Honor. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, for your time today. Real quickly, just to kind of let you know what your role is, what we're expecting. And that's for you to evaluate the evidence and the testimony that you hear and determine if you find it credible. The most important part for you is to make a decision on whether or not people met their burden. It's a high burden, and as it should be. When someone accuses you of a crime in this country, they must prove beyond a reasonable doubt to the person who's responsible for that. She raised a very important point. I think it's the critical thing for us all to focus on today. It's intent. You're going to hear testimony from numerous officers. You're going to hear testimony from the owner of the backpack, and you're going to hear testimony from my client. And they're all going to explain to you their version of what they believe happened. And what I think you could find consistently was, my client didn't intend to try anybody in. He had pretty negative experience with law enforcement previously. And when they approached him, what he felt was no good reason other than him attempting to be a good Samaritan. The testimonial shows it. They tried to walk the other way as legal loan stop harassing. What you won't hear today is that he made any forward steps to move a larceny along. You know, larceny requires you to take someone's property with a sense of something private. Finding somebody's lost belongings and attempting to get them back to where they belong, it's not a crime. So we feel confident we can keep an open mind and work this case, this process, but you'll determine after all the testimony and all the evidence that there's just not enough there to state that beyond reasonable doubt, my client is property.
Witness?
Your Honor, the people call right the name.
He's here.
Their whole way is far away.
Watch your step on the ramp, officer, raise your right hand. Tell a good story. That's it. Do it in English.
Mr. Nemo, can you state your name for the record, please?
Raymond Namo.
Mr. Nemo, I want to draw your attention to the morning of October 24th, 2022. At approximately 9 a.m., do you recall where you were?
Yes, ma'am. I was at the lobby of Schoolcraft College.
Are you a student there?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you there that morning because you had class?
Yes, I did.
When you arrived at school that morning, did you have anything with you?
Yes, I had my backpack. That I keep my books and other personal items in.
And what does that backpack look like?
It's a regular mountain terrain backpack, black and blue in color.
And you indicated there were some possessions inside that backpack?
Yes, ma'am.
What was in your backpack that day?
In that backpack, it was my the book for the law class that I'm attending, and I had my identification card and cash worth $20.
When you were at school that morning, was there something that occurred that caused you to make contact with the police?
Yes, ma'am. My backpack was taken away. It was stolen.
Where was the last place that you saw your backpack that morning at school?
I had it set right next to the chair, right in the front lobby.
And was there anyone else that you observed in the lobby where you were sitting with your backpack?
No, ma'am.
At what point did you notice that your backpack was no longer with you?
When I turned around and the backpack was gone. Actually, what happened was there was a man there, and so he was trying to get my attention while I was on the phone on an important call with my sister regarding my mother's health. And that person was trying to get my attention, and I had turned around and told him to give me a moment while I was on that important call. And then all of a sudden, after I was done with the call, I turned around and my backpack was gone, and that man was also gone. I observed him leaving the building.
Approximately how long were you on that phone call for?
Not more than 2 minutes.
And after you finished your call, that's when you noticed the backpack
Yes,
was
ma'am.
gone? Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Please do.
Mr. Nico, I'm using a photograph that I've marked as people's exhibit 1. The backpack that's present in that photograph, have you seen that backpack before?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that your backpack?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admission of exhibit 1.
Mr. Hadley? Objection, John. Thank you for the stipulation. That'll come in.
The gentleman that was trying to get your attention while you were on the phone, were you able to see him?
Yes.
How far away from him were you when he was trying to get your attention?
No more than 5 feet.
If you saw that person again, would you be able to identify him?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you see that person present in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you identify him for the record?
Yes, ma'am. He's over there with the purple shirt.
Your Honor, let the record reflect the witnesses identify the defendant.
Noted.
After you noticed your backpack was missing, were you the one that contacted the police?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the police arrive at the school after you called?
Yes.
Did you have contact with those officers?
Yes, ma'am.
After you noticed your backpack was missing, did you see the gentleman who had been in the lobby again that morning?
No. Do you mean like after?
Right.
After he was apprehended by the police, yes.
Okay. So between the time that you saw him exit the lobby,
Yes.
you noticed your backpack was missing, and then the next time you see that gentleman is when he's in custody with the police?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Had you ever seen that gentleman before?
No, ma'am.
Did you give him or anyone else permission to take your backpack from the school that morning?
No, ma'am.
I have nothing further for this witness.
Mr. Hadley?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Afternoon, sir.
Sincerely sorry you find yourself in here today and about the whole issue with the backpack, but so bear with me. We're gonna try to get to the bottom of this as quickly as we can. So you testified previously that when you were at the address in Livonia, Michigan, that you'd sat your backpack down behind you, correct?
On besides the chair that I was
Besides the
sitting
chair.
on.
So you're looking this way. I'm just trying to, visually.
No,
figure it out. So-
if I'm sitting on this chair, it'd be to my right side,
Okay, so sitting kind of behind you in the chair,
not behind me, to my side.
to your side, okay.
Yes,
Okay. So you've testified, or I'm sorry, you made statements to the police when they came out after you called, correct?
yes.
Do you remember what time of day you called approximately?
It was approximately around 9 o'clock.
If I told you that it was exactly 9 o'clock in the morning when you called the police, would you speak?
I'd
that?
say it's possible.
Okay. Now, you testified that you were on the phone, correct, with police?
I was on the phone with my sister regarding my mother's health.
My mistake. So there was a couple of phone calls that were made. At one point, you were on the phone with the police, correct?
After that phone call, that's when I recognized that my bag was missing. That's when I made the call to police.
And what were you talking to your relative about?
It was my sister. We were talking regarding my mother's health condition and how she was in the hospital and needed immediate surgery.
Jim, I'm sincere. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope everything's okay.
I appreciate it.
Would you say, it's not like a stupid question I'm asking. It was probably a pretty serious, pretty emotional conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay. So it'd be fair to say that your focus was probably more on the phone call about your mother than exactly where your backpack was, right?
Yes,
Okay. So at some point you noticed that your backpack was missing, correct?
yes.
We know that there was 2 phone calls that were made, one to your sister, one to the police. At some point, you testified somebody had tugged on your sleeve or tried to get your attention, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you can't describe what that individual looked like, correct?
yes, I can.
Okay. How did you describe that individual?
He was about 5'10", shaved face, short hair, dark blue sweater, dark pants.
One moment, Your Honor. Sure. if I may. My apologies. The materials I thought I had seen a witness statement from you. So we're getting to, for the first time here. I want to make sure I understand them. How would you describe the individual that tugged on your sleeve, tried to get your attention?
He didn't tug my sleeve. He tapped me on my shoulder.
Sorry, I mean to misstate your words. The individual who got your attention while you were on.
Understand?
How would you describe his appearance?
His appearance, short hair, shaved face, about 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", dark blue sweater and dark pants.
Okay. And you provided a description for the individual who you thought took your backpack to police, correct?
Correct.
And what did you say that individual was wearing?
Same thing I just said. Dark blue shirt, I'm sorry, dark blue sweater, dark pants, short hair, shaved face, about
Okay.
5'10".
Okay, so do you believe it was the same individual who came up and tapped on your shoulder?
He was the only person there, sir.
Okay. So he tapped on your shoulder, then at some point after that, you noticed that your backpack was missing?
Yes,
Okay, then you called police.
yes.
Okay. Did you do anything else after you called police, or did you just wait inside where your
I just
backpack-
waited inside.
No further questions.
I have nothing further for this witness.
Sir, you can step down, watch your step.
Your Honor, the people call Officer Homa.
Homa? Correct, Homa? Raise your right hand. Swear for to tell us anything you want. Absolutely right. Proceed, Madam Prosecutor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Homa, can you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Officer Destin Homa.
Are you employed?
Yes, by Schoolcraft College as a police officer,
How long have you been a police officer?
approximately 1 year.
Were you on duty the morning of October 24th, approximately 9 a.m.?
Yes,
Were you dispatched on a call at that date and time?
yes, I was dispatched to a call for a larceny
And where was the location of that larceny?
within the lobby of 31777 Industrial Road, Livonia.
And that's Schoolcraft College.
Yes,
Did you respond to that call?
yes, I and Officer Byers did.
Is Officer Byers your partner?
Yes,
You two, are you in a car together?
yes.
When you arrived at Schoolcraft College that morning, did you have contact with anyone?
Yes, I had contact with Mr. Raymond Neiman.
And based on your conversation with Mr. Namo, did you have anyone that you were looking for relative to this case?
Yes, he had told me the description of a male with blue sweatshirt and black cargo pants. Beyond that, he said that that was the only person within the lobby at the time he made the phone call.
And did you do anything to see if you could locate that person?
Yes, I called for backup, of which Officer Milton and Officer Hollow responded. And all four of us exited into the adjacent parking lot to see if we could locate the bag or the individual match the description.
Did Mr. Namo give you a description of what his backpack looked like?
Yes, he said it was a black and blue mountain terrain backpack.
And once the other officers arrived and the four of you went to go look for either the individual with the backpack, were you able to locate either of those items?
Yes, immediately upon exiting the lobby, we saw that there was an individual match description, blue sweatshirt, black pants, seemed to be reaching into the backpack.
And so let me back you up. So you see a person who matches the description of the person that you received from Mr. Namo, correct?
Yes.
And you see that person where?
He was behind a black Ford F-150, probably about, I'd say, 20 feet from the lobby entrance.
And you had testified that there was a backpack with him?
Yes, a backpack matching the description of the missing item, black and blue backpack was right below him when he was reaching into it.
Okay. So based on your observation of this person who matches the description and the backpack that matches the description, did you take any action?
Yes, I attempted to approach the individual and make contact with him, as did the rest of the officers that were with me.
And let me ask you one question before you move on. At the time that you respond to this call, I know you had testified that you and Officer Byers arrived in a vehicle. Is that a marked patrol vehicle?
Yes,
And at the time that you are at Schoolcraft, are you wearing a police uniform?
yes, we were, both Officer Byers and I were fully decorated in classy uniform.
And the other officers, Hollow and Milton, were they also in a
Yes,
marked
they were
patrol
also
vehicle?
identifiable and classy.
Okay, so they're in police uniforms, police vehicles. It's apparent that the four of you are police officers.
Yes,
Okay. And so you approach this person that you see with the backpack.
yes.
And as you're approaching, are you saying anything to that individual?
Yes.
What do you say?
I tried to make contact with him, ask him if that was his backpack, or if he had retrieved it from anywhere. And he started to retreat southbound through the parking lot, away from the vehicles, kind of in a southeastern kind of motion. I apologize, southwestern.
Okay, and as this person's exiting the parking lot, how are they doing that? Are they walking? Are they running?
At first, just after asking that first question, it was more of just a walk into a more open area before he turned and started to engage with us and look at all four of us.
And after he's sort of walking away from you, does he do anything else?
No, he just walked away, turned to look at us, and then I began to ask him again if that was his backpack.
And what did he tell you about that backpack?
He told me he had never seen that backpack before. Or if I may correct
Yes.
myself, he said that he had never seen any type of backpack before.
Okay. Did you walk over to that spot where you had observed the backpack?
No, my primary focus was on the suspect before the backpack.
Were you, after you had contact Well, let me ask you this. After you had contact with the defendant, were you apprised of what was in the backpack?
Yes, I believe Officer Byers had taken note of the items that were in there, and Rainbow had described that there was a law book, his identification, and he just said $20, but he did not describe what denomination that was.
And I don't think I asked this. Do you see the person that you had contact with in the parking lot present in the courtroom this morning?
Yes, I do.
And can you identify that person for the record?
That would be the defendant in the purple shirt.
Thank you.
Noted.
Thank you, Your Honor. And did you obtain the name or any identification from the gentleman in the parking lot?
The only identification we were able to ascertain from him that he verbally identified himself as Mark Jacobs.
Did you search or pat down Mr. Jacobs?
Yes, later on in the interaction, yes.
And as you did that, did you locate any property on Mr. Jacobs' person?
Yes, on his person was the identification belonging to Raymond Nemu and a single $20 bill.
Okay. And you mentioned that you didn't approach the backpack as it was on the ground in the parking lot.
No, my primary focus was the suspect before I came back to look at the backpack.
Okay. And did you, after you located the Mr. Nemo's license and that $20 bill, did you have any further conversation with Mr. Nemo?
No.
Okay. Did you
Oh,
know?
I apologize, Mr. Nemo.
Yes.
Yes, once the defendant was taken for further questioning or interrogation, I asked Mr. Nemu if just a secondary time to ascertain exactly what he had in that bag before we revealed to him what we found. And he again confirmed a $20 bill, his identification, and a law book, which was exactly what was found both on the defendant's person and then in the bag was the law book.
I have nothing further for this witness.
Mr. Hadley.
Thank you, Your Honor. Afternoon.
Afternoon.
Officer Helma, you've received training and preparation for becoming a law enforcement officer, correct?
Yes, sir.
And very briefly, the training consists of how to properly conduct an investigation, correct?
Yes.
How to do reports.
Yes.
And in this case that we're here for today, you prepared a report, correct?
Yes.
I kind of want to go through some of the things that we just talked about. Specifically, walk me through, you arrived on the scene, correct? And you met with the complaining witness who called you guys out about the missing bag.
Yes, we arrived in the lobby and made contact with Mr. Nemo.
Okay. And then I'm guessing we're talking about describing a backpack and what he thought the person looked like. Had to be a pretty short conversation, right?
Yeah, it was a fairly short conversation. He just told us basic description of both the individual and the items that were lost.
So it was, and just for speculation's sake, approximately a couple of minutes after you arrived, you were done with speaking with Mr. Namu and then moved on to the next phase of the investigation, which was trying to secure the location of the suspect, right?
Yes.
All right. From your report, do you remember what time you received the phone call from the complaining witness?
We were dispatched around approximately, I believe it was 0900 hours, 9 a.m.
And as an attorney, I'm not completely familiar with the inner workings of the dispatch, but I got a pretty good idea. So if I'm understanding right, the call goes to the dispatch, then out to you guys, then you guys respond. So would it be fair to say Mr. Namu probably called a few minutes before 9 o'clock?
We actually were in the area. We arrived fairly immediately, probably within, I'd say, a minute of being called.
Okay, so he probably called like right at 9. You got it right around the corner.
Yes.
Okay. And your police report indicates what time you guys got on the scene. Do you remember what time you got there?
I believe in the police report, I put that I was approximately there at 900 hours.
Okay.
So your report doesn't state though exactly what time this phone call came in, correct?
Yes, we were, like I said earlier, we were dispatched and arrived approximately at the same time, around 900 hours. It was a fairly quick response time.
Okay. So you previously testified that when you came outside to try to find the suspect, you located him, and let me use your words, immediately upon exiting the lot. That's what you previously testified to, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so my client was just standing out there, correct?
it seemed from my perspective that I was reaching into the black and blue mountain backpack.
But he was stationary, he was just kind of there.
Yes, yeah, stationary.
So I want to get into the weeds with this about minutes and everything exactly, but it's fair to say that there was a fair amount of passage of time, minutes, several minutes, from when the backpack had gone missing to when you saw my client's backpack, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Would it be fair to say in that period of time that the complaining witness took no vigilante action and didn't go out and try to run my client down or find out where his backpack was, right?
no, he didn't. He was still inside the lobby.
So your testimony today, and what we've heard is that my client was seen by law enforcement with a backpack, standing feet away from the crime minutes after it happened. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. So he wasn't fleeing the scene or running or headed away from the scene when you saw him at all, correct?
no,
You said he was looking in the back, right?
yes, he was
Okay.
looking.
No further questions.
Redirect.
How did the further this one, sir?
You can step down. Watch your step.
The people call Officer Byers. This has been good training, Judge. I don't think I've worn shoes for this long. I've got to get used to it now.
Make a motion to take the
That's
shoe
fine.
off. I'll deny it.
That's fine.
No.
Officer Byers, watch your step on my incline ramp here. Raise your right hand. Swear firm, come up here and tell us something.
Yes, sir.
Have a seat. Your witness, Ms. Manorino.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Byers, can you state your name for the record, please?
Corey Byers,
Are you employed?
yes,
Where?
at the Schoolcraft College Police Department.
What do you do there?
I'm a police officer,
How long have you been so employed?
1 year.
Were you on duty the morning of October 24th at approximately 9 a.m.?
Yes.
Are you assigned to partner with any other officers?
Officer Homer,
And were you partnered with Officer Homa that morning?
yes,
And, were dispatched on a call at 9 a.m.?
correct,
Did you respond to that call?
yes.
What was the nature of the call?
A larceny from a building,
And what was the location?
Schoolcraft College,
And so you and Officer Homa go to Schoolcraft College.
yes,
Did you have contact with the person with calls to report that larceny?
yes,
And were you given a description of the property that was taken?
yes,
Were you given a description of a person who was in the area at the time that that backpack was taken?
yes.
Did you take any action to locate either the backpack or that person that was seen in the area?
Can you repeat the question?
Yep. Did you take any action to, did you do anything to find either the backpack or that person that Mr. Nemo had described to you?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Officer Homer and I eventually went outside to see, looked around the school to see if we seen anybody, and I noticed my partner saw the guy describing the description by black F-150, and he dropped the backpack.
Okay, so I want to back up. You said that you and Officer Homa eventually went outside. Approximately how long passed between when you got the description of the backpack and this individual to when you and Officer Homer are going outside?
About 10 minutes.
Okay. So you, and then eventually you and Officer Homer locate the person,
Yes.
and that person matched the description that you had been given?
Yes.
And you mentioned that there was a backpack.
Yes.
Where was that backpack relative to the person that you saw?
Right next to him, he got it right behind the back of 150.
Did you have contact with the individual who you saw in the parking lot?
I did not talk to him.
Okay. Did you have contact with the backpack?
Yes.
Okay. What did you do?
I eventually got the backpack and brought it inside to check to see if that's the correct backpack that Namu.
Based on what you saw of the backpack when it's in the parking lot, was it consistent with the description of the backpack that you had been given?
Yes.
There's a photograph in front of you that was previously admitted as Exhibit 1. Is that the backpack that you saw in the parking lot?
Yes.
Once you, let me ask you this, did you retrieve the backpack from the parking lot?
Yes.
Okay. Did you look inside the backpack to see if there's anything in it?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there anything in the backpack at the time that you grabbed it from the parking lot?
No.
And what did you do with the backpack after that?
I brought it into my apartment. I checked the containment of that backpack to make sure that it was the items that that Namu said that was inside the backpack, and then I took picture of the evidence.
At any time, did you show Mr. Namu the backpack and ask him if that was his backpack?
No.
I have nothing further to say.
Mr. Hadley.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Afternoon.
Officer Byers, correct?
Yes,
Officer Byers, you went through some formal training to become a law officer, correct?
that's correct.
And in your training, you were taught how to properly complete reports, do investigations, everything of that nature.
That's correct.
And is that what you did in this case?
That's correct.
It's important because I think the information in your report is good, and I really want to make sure that what's in here is accurate. So if I'm kind of going through the facts of what happened that day, it's true that you, Officer Byers, and who we just heard from Officer Whom, you guys were dispatched to Schoolcraft for this larceny improvement building, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and in your report, you detailed what time the other two officers, Officer Hollow and Officer Milton, you detailed what time they arrived, correct?
Not in the report.
Okay. Permission to approach the witness? Would it help you if I showed your report? I mean, I know this is a while ago. And in fact, I've already drawn pictures all of this, kind of like an end around, but read quietly to yourself. And then after you've had a chance to kind of look over the area, let me know if you remember stating your report, what time your fellow officers arrived. And don't read it, just let me know when you're ready. Don't read it out loud. Read it, just don't talk out loud. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So what time did your fellow officers arrive?
Around 9:10.
Okay. So you guys are there at 9 o'clock, okay? And you're there at 9 o'clock in response to this alleged larceny, okay? And your fellow officers, it sounds like all of you guys were in uniform, right?
Correct.
Okay. So they show up 10 minutes later approximately. So now we've got 4 uniformed officers in marked cars, right?
Correct.
Okay. So it's 10 minutes, 9:10 is when your report indicates you guys left the building to go out and look for the suspect.
That's correct.
So just to be clear, about 9 o'clock roughly is when the backpack allegedly gets stolen. 10 minutes later, you guys see my client standing near the same backpack. We can all agree that's the backpack. You see him standing nearby, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you carry a wallet?
Yes, I do.
Me too. A lot of people do. I've been, did just kind of pull the room. I'd be really curious. Where do you keep your driver's license?
and my wallet, so.
Okay. Do you think in your experience as a law officer and just as a human in general, that most people carry, if they have a wallet, their license in their wallet, or you know, a wallet in their pocket?
Yes,
Kind of same with cash.
yes.
What about law books? You usually put law books in your pocket? Since we've done questions, I have to ask you.
No,
Okay. And when you guys got to the backpack, there was a law book in it, correct?
correct.
Okay. And you did find the complaining witness's ID and some cash, though, didn't you?
Correct.
Okay. And where'd you find that at?
I didn't directly search him. My officer Milton did, and while she was continuing searching, she had the ID and the money, and I took it
Okay.
and hold on to it.
So, but it was complaining witness's ID, because the same dollar amount of money that he said he'd lost or had been taken, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Officer, thank you for your cooperation. I actually have no further questions this time, Your Honor.
Anything else? Ms. Marion?
I have nothing further for this officer, Your Honor. People call Officer Milton.
I'm surprised you can sit down. Thank you.
Did you have something German? Your accent.
Seriously? Man, you should work that. Officer, come on up. Raise your right hand for me.
Swear for Bill, something up here. Good. Yes, I see right there.
Knock yourself out, Ms. Manarino.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Milton, can you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Officer Milton,
And where are you employed?
Wayne County Regional Academy Schoolcraft College,
And what do you do there?
police officer,
How long have you been so employed?
a year.
Were you on duty the morning of October 24th of this year?
Yes,
At approximately 9:10 a.m. were you dispatched on a call?
yes,
Did you respond to that call?
yes, I did.
What was the nature of it?
It was a larceny.
And when you arrived, were there any other officers on scene?
Yes, there was.
And who else was on scene?
There was Officer Homa and Officer Byers.
And did any other officers arrive with you?
Yes, it was Officer Hollow.
And when you arrived on scene, what did you do?
When I arrived on the scene, I made contact with the victim. As soon as I made contact with the victim, he explained to us that someone had taken his duffel bag and the suspect was outside, so we told him we'll go out there and take a look. Right there, took a look, spotted the duffel bag in between two vehicles.
And was it all four of you officers that were there that went outside?
Yes,
Okay. And then you were able to locate that bag outside?
yes,
And where was the bag when you located it?
it was between two vehicles.
Okay. And had Mr. Nemo given you a description of his bag, what it looked like?
Yes,
And how did he describe it?
a blue duffel bag.
Okay. And did he say duffel bag?
Well, he said a blue duffel bag.
He didn't describe it as a backpack.
He could have described it as a backpack, but when I looked at it, I seen it, it just looked to me like a blue duffel bag.
And did you, so so Mr. Nemo told you that the person that he saw and the person he saw is outside. So you go outside, right?
Yes,
Okay. And do you see that person outside?
yes,
Okay. Do you personally have contact with that person?
yes.
Okay, immediately?
Not immediately.
Okay.
As soon as I seen the suspect, I slowly started approaching him and he took off running.
Took off running.
Yes,
Did you chase?
yes,
Okay. And after you chased him, were you able to apprehend him?
yes,
And did you have contact with that subject at that point?
yes.
Was that a male subject or female?
Male subject.
Okay. Did he identify himself to you?
No, I asked him, what was his ID? Did he have any identification on him?
Was he able to produce an ID?
No, he wasn't.
Was he able to give you any identifying information about him?
He told me his name was Mark Jacob.
Okay. And do you see the person who identified himself that morning as Mark Jacobs present in the courtroom this morning?
Yes, I do.
Okay, can you identify what he's wearing for the record?
Yes, he's wearing a purple shirt and a red tie.
So noted.
Did you have any conversation with Mr. Jacobs about this bag that you had seen between the two vehicles?
No, I didn't have any conversation with him about the bag.
Okay, did you hear him make any statements about the bag?
No, I did.
Okay, did you interview Mr. Jacobs at all about anything that had occurred that morning?
Yes, I did.
Okay, what did you ask Mr. Jacobs about?
I asked Mr. Jacobs, what was his, because he took off running, so I asked him, did he have any ID on him? He told me he didn't have any ID. When we apprehended him, when I did a pat down, there was an ID and identification inside of his pocket.
And did that ID bear the name Mark Jacobs?
No, it didn't.
Was there a different name on that identification?
Yes, it was.
What was the name on it?
It was Nemu.
Okay. And when you were patting it down, did you look at any other items?
Yes, a $20 bill.
Did you ask, or what questions, if any, did you ask Mr. Jacobs about the fact that you had found Mr. Nemo's license in his pocket?
When I asked him, why did he have this identification, did he know this? Well, why did he have this identification in his pocket? He stated that he didn't even know it was in his pocket, nor the $20, because he borrowed the pants from a friend that he only known for a week.
So Mr. Jacobs' story is that the pants he has on his body at the point that you're having contact with him do not belong to him, they belong to someone else.
Yes,
Okay, and so that's why he's saying that what's in the pockets is not his.
yes,
Based on your training and experience, did you find that to be a plausible story?
can you repeat that?
Did you find that to be a believable story based on your
Yes,
training and experience?
Yes.
Okay, so you found it believable. that-
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. No, I didn't find it believable. I couldn't hear what she was saying.
That's okay. So when he says, these aren't my pants, you don't believe that?
No, I didn't believe that.
And when you first approached Mr. Jacobs in the parking lot, you said that he took off running.
Yes,
Based on your training and experience as a police officer, is that a reaction that people typically have when they have come in contact with law enforcement?
that's not typically something that everyone has.
At the time that Mr. Jacobs took off and ran from you and the other officers, had you explained to him why you were there?
Yes,
Okay, so he knew it was relative to this missing bag.
yes.
And that's the point when you took off running?
Objection, Your Honor. I think the question calls for speculation on what my client may or may not.
I was asking if they had informed him that they were there about the bag and then he took off running.
I'll sustain the question the way it was worded, or I'll sustain the objection to the question as worded.
Okay. Before, let me see this, prior to Mr. Jacobs taking off and running, had you informed him why you were there to talk to him?
Well, there was 4 officers present. So I wasn't the actual officer that approached him and said something to him about the bag. I was with the officers that did
And
that.
who was the officer that did that?
I'm not sure which one it was.
Okay, there was one of the other.
It was
officers.
one of, yeah, it was one of, and as they were approaching him and asking about the bag and he took off running, I backed up my partner.
Was Mr. Jacobs able to give you the identity of the person who he and pants that he was wearing belonged to?
He didn't have no identity of him. He didn't have a phone number for him nor address. He said he only known him for a week.
And did Mr. Jacobs indicate that this person who owned the pants, if he was at school with him that morning?
Can you repeat that?
Was the person who owned the pants, was Mr. Jacobs' story that that person was at school with him that morning?
No, he didn't say that.
I have nothing further.
That's right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, officer. Real quickly, for the record's sake, you've gone through formal training as a police officer, correct?
Yes,
Okay, let's keep. Borrowed pants. Testified that my client was wearing borrowed pants, right?
yes,
You mentioned that he had no ID, correct?
correct.
Would you say it's consistent, maybe in some of your interactions with some of the more downtrodden members of our community, that that's probably who commonly would have no ID, maybe a pair of borrowed pants? Just ask if you're stopping school principals who told you they were wearing borrowed pants.
No,
No. Fair to say that when you guys found my client, team, maybe he was down on his luck.
Could have been.
Yeah,
Okay.
$20.
He did have $20. We don't contest that fact at all. We've heard some testimony today from a few officers. You were all there at the same time, and you all approached my client at the same time, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, your police report, as you just told us, you've received training to make sure all the facts, all the details are correct and accurate, correct? Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. In your police report, though, isn't it true that you didn't make any mention about the four of you approaching him at the same time and then him at first walking and saying, "Stop harassing"? You didn't mention that in the report, right?
That's because I didn't hear that.
Okay, that's fair, but it's not in your report. Okay, it was only after he had turned, faced you guys and said, "Stop harassing me." It was at that time that he turned and ran, right?
I don't remember him saying, "Stop harassing me," and running.
So since you don't remember, it probably would have been a pretty important thing, I guess, for everyone to have written in the reports. But thankfully, we've got Officer Humas. And we do know from his report that that's what he testified and what he said today. So I won't beat you up on this fact. Let's just keep moving through it. One of the things that we've talked about today, again, I just want to verify here. Did my client seem to cooperate once you guys had made contact and answered your questions? Did he exert his right to remain silent? Or did he
When you
answer-
say cooperate,
Did he answer your questions?
yes, yes.
Cooperating, right, is a word that could be, widely interpreted. So let's just say, did he answer your questions? That's fair. The officer, honestly, I think we've heard everything we need to, and I think prior testimony speaks for itself. I do think I have one question. Give me just one moment.
Yes, sir.
Officer, I have no further questions. If the people have no redirects. Speak to witness, Your Honor.
Any
I
redirect?
have nothing further for.
Okay. Officer, you step down. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, officer.
Watch your step on my ramp.
One last witness, Officer Hollow. She's no.
Officer, raise your right hand. Swear or affirm?
Officer, can you state your name for the record, please?
Officer Hollow.
Are you employed?
Yes, ma'am.
Where are you employed?
Schoolcraft College.
What do you do there?
I'm a police officer.
How long have you been so employed?
1 year.
Were you on duty on the morning of, October 24th of this year?
Yes, ma'am.
At approximately 9:10 a.m. were you dispatched on a call?
Yes, ma'am.
What was the nature of that call?
A larceny in progress.
What was the location?
31777 Industrial in Livonia.
Did you respond to that call?
I was a secondary unit response, yes.
Did anyone else respond with you secondarily?
Officer Milton.
When you arrived on scene, were there other officers already present?
Yes, ma'am.
Who?
Officer Homa and Officer Byers.
When you arrived on scene, did you have contact with anyone?
I had immediate contact with the other officers, the primary officers that were there, and we immediately went outside into the parking lot.
And what was the reason you were going outside in the parking lot?
I was informed that the suspect was possibly in the parking lot.
Were you given a description of that suspect?
I was just told he was taller and he took a backpack.
And you and the other three officers who were with you, you all go outside?
Yes, ma'am.
And while you're outside in the parking lot, do you see anyone?
We saw a man with a backpack in his hand, and the second he saw us, he dropped it and he kind of took off.
And was the description of the person who came in the parking lot, was that consistent with what you had received from the other officers?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said he took off running?
Yes.
Did you or the other officers follow him?
We all four followed him, yes.
Okay, and were you able to make contact with him again?
We were.
Do you see the person who you had contact with in that parking lot present in court today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you identify him for the record?
The man in the purple shirt at the defendant's table.
No.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you have contact with him after after you tracked him down in the parking lot?
Yes,
You spoke with him?
briefly, yes.
What was the nature of your conversation?
It was after I recovered the backpack.
Okay, well, let's go back to that.
Okay.
So you walk out into the parking lot
Yes,
and you see the defendant drop the backpack.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so after he's in custody, you go back and look for the backpack?
I went and recovered the backpack as they escorted him into the building.
Okay. And was the backpack that was in the parking lot consistent with the description you had received from the other officers?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did that backpack look like?
It was a mountain terrain outdoor gear backpack. It was blue and black.
Did you open the backpack once you,
Not immediately, no.
at some point, did you open it?
Yes,
At what point did you open the backpack?
when we were inside the building.
Okay. And that was the building at Schoolcraft?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And why were you opening the backpack at that point?
To find the contents to make sure it was the owners.
Okay. And did you find anything in that backpack?
There was a law book in the backpack.
Okay. Was that consistent with the description you had received from Mr. Nanu about the backpack?
Yes.
And I want to have you take a look at that photograph that's right in front of you, which is previously admitted as Exhibit 1. Is that a photograph of the backpack that you located on October 24th?
Yes.
And that book that's depicted in the photograph, is that the book that was in the backpack?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you show either of those items to Mr. Nanu to have him identify them?
No. I did not, anyway.
Okay. And after the defendant was taken into custody, did you have further contact?
Yes, I helped question.
Okay. And did you question him about this backpack?
Yes, about the backpack and the money and the license that we found in his pants.
Okay. Who found the money and the license in his pants?
Officer Homa and Officer Milton.
Do you know whose license he had in his pants?
He had the victims.
Did defendant offer any explanation as to why he had Mr. Nanu's license in his pocket?
He, after questioning, he said that he borrowed the pants from a guy named Thomas. When we asked who Thomas was, he said just a guy from the neighborhood, and we asked him how we could get a hold of Thomas. He did not have an address, last name, phone number. He just said he knows him from walking around in the neighborhood.
So the defendant was not able to provide you with any information so you could further investigate who this Thomas is.
No, ma'am.
So you were never able to find out if those pants belonged to this Thomas character.
No, ma'am.
But the pants in which the license and the money were found were on the defendant's person at the time that those items were located.
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Henry.
Briefly, Your Honor, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I'm just going to go over a couple of facts to make sure that what we've heard previously is consistent again. Fair to say that the day question, you arrived 10 minutes at 9, to be dispatched for a larceny, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the larceny itself happened sometime before 9, or the alleged larceny, sorry, happened sometime before 9 o'clock roughly.
Yes, to my knowledge.
And just so we're clear, the contents of the backpack, we were at Schoolcraft, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's a backpack that was found, and in the backpack was a text, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There was an interaction with 4 uniformed officers, and my client borrowed pants with someone else's ID. We had a conversation with them. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, he said, stop harassing me or something to that nature, correct?
Yes, he did.
And then he turned and took off, correct?
Yes.
He was apprehended.
Yes.
And the only items that were allegedly in the backpack that were found in my client would have been a driver's license ID and a $20 bill, correct?
The license and the $20 bill were not in the backpack. They were on his person.
Okay, so those were in the backpack. Those were on his person.
Yes.
Okay. And really, I guess my point would be is you never saw that there was ever a driver's license or $20 in a backpack, correct? We don't know
No,
that.
they were in his pocket.
They were in his pocket, right? And we don't have any other evidence to say that those items, other than the complaining witness testimony, who, as we heard, was having a pretty rough day. That's the only evidence that we had that the license and cash was ever in the backpack and stuff, right? You didn't see it.
I'm
Anybody
unaware if the
else?
license and the money were in the backpack. I found them on his person.
Okay, that's really what we're going after here. So the only evidence that we have that of the original contents of the backpack would have been the complaining witness's testimony.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you interviewed did you speak with the complaining witness that day?
I did not have any contact with him.
But even though he got all of his items back, he determined he wanted to press charges against my client. That's-
Relevance, I don't know if they're trying to property after the grounds. Do you guys agree with anything?
What's relevant?
Your Honor, relevance, again, I think would be speaking clearly to my motive and whether or not the elements of the crime have been satisfied via testimony. If the officers believe that property was to be rightfully returned, I would state that it's relevant to jury's consideration. And again, what the mental state of my client is, as this isn't a specific, I'm sorry, this is a specific intent crime, not a general liability. So I would say just give us a little bit of leeway as to get into, did my client's behaviors run consistent with somebody who's trying to deprive someone permanently?
Any response?
I don't think that's necessarily what the question is.
It wasn't sustained objection.
I'll rephrase. How long have you been a police officer?
1 year.
1 year. In your experience, have you investigated other larcenies?
Yes.
Okay. Can we agree, I mean, again, I'm a criminal defense attorney, I see these cases, can we agree that it's more common for people who steal things to leave the scene of the crimes than once it's stolen?
Yes, which is what he was trying to do.
No further questions?
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Officer Howell, you can, no,
Your Honor, the people were asked.
watch your step.
We move for directed verdict denied. And I'd like
Denied.
to call my first witness. Now calling my defendant. Mr. Jacobs.
Mr. Jacobs, come on. Raise your right hand. Tell us something about perpetrator. Have a seat.
Your Honor, permission to approach, he's had a hell of a day. Sure. Doing okay?
Sir.
No, this is a lot.
Yeah.
I'm gonna run through some questions because we need the full picture of what was actually going on.
Absolutely.
So, did you ever see this black and blue backpack that everybody's been talking about?
No, I never seen a backpack specifically.
Okay, so walk me through what was going on that day.
So I was walking through the parking lot.
That's cool, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I found a $20 bill and ID on the ground.
Okay.
So I picked it up and I put it in my pocket and that's why I was walking around the parking lot. I was looking for the owner, if I could match a face to the ID.
And at some point in that day, did you ever go up and try to get the attention of the complaining witness when you were looking for the person who had lost
I
this?
did.
Okay. How'd you try to get his attention?
So I approached the gentleman in the lobby and I tapped on his shoulder and I tried to get his attention. He was on the phone.
How did he respond to you when he looked at you? Did he treat you a certain way after he looked at you?
Just like he didn't want to be bothered. It seemed, I don't know, he had something going on.
What did you do? Let me ask you an open-ended question. I'm sorry, Mr. Cross here. What did you do after you tugged on his shoulder, tried to get his attention to find out if he was missing any property?
So after that, I went into the parking lot to wait.
So this is kind of a tough question to ask, but it's important. You mentioned that you were wearing borrowed pants from somebody around the neighborhood and you didn't have ID.
That's true.
Are you going through a tough financial time right now? Sir?
Actually, I am, yes.
Okay. And that day you were walking around maybe looking for lost property and you found some, you're trying to find the rightful owner. That's what you.
I don't know specifically that I was looking for lost property. I was just taking a shortcut through that lot and I seen it on the ground. I was just trying to do the right thing.
Okay. That's an interaction with law enforcement in the past.
Yeah, I have. And I haven't been treated, so fairly.
Please walk us through it. I mean, you've had.
I feel that a lot of times police are dishonest and I feel that they've lied here today.
So I know it's tough for you to sit there and have me speak for on your behalf, but again, that day, it's been alleged that you've taken something that you intended to permanently deprive someone from, a backpack. You steal anybody's backpack?
Absolutely not, sir.
Did you ever have any intent to deprive the complaining witness?
Absolutely not.
Did you try to make contact with the complaining witness to find out if he was missing?
Yes, I was trying to return whoever's property that was. I was just trying to match up, anybody in the area, the ID that I had on me.
I have a feeling we know what some questions may be coming your way in a second. You did make some statements to law enforcement that day, didn't you?
That's correct.
Okay, you could have remained silent, exercised a right to counsel, a right to be quiet.
Absolutely.
You did, you tried to explain yourself.
I did.
Tell them that you didn't know it was
I really just didn't want them hassling me. I've been hassled in the past. I really didn't want to be bothered. At that point, when I seen the officers approaching me with my past experiences, I just wanted out of the situation. That's where my mind went. It's just I didn't want anything to do with the situation.
And I'm asking in your mind, not what the officers thought, but in your mind. You told the officers that you found the $20 in the driver's license while walking to the parking lot. Based on what you were wearing and the way you looked and the way that you've had interaction with law enforcement in the past, did you think they were going to believe you?
Absolutely not.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Ms. Manarino.
Mr. Jacobs, you don't dispute that the officers located Mr. Namu's license in your pocket, do you?
No, that's correct. They did.
You don't dispute that they found a $20 bill in your pocket
That's
either, do you?
correct. They did.
And you don't dispute that when the officers were approaching you in the parking lot that you ran from them, correct?
I wouldn't say that's completely accurate.
You were leaving the parking lot to avoid having contact with the officers,
Not at first.
but eventually.
That's accurate. Yes.
I have nothing further.
No, I have no further questions for the witness.
You showed up. Closing.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very simple case, very simple one. You have a defendant who was found in possession of the property reported stolen mere moments after it's reported stolen. All four of the officers consistently testified that at the time they went to approach the defendant in the parking lot, that he was standing right next to the backpack, dropped the backpack, and then took up running. Not because he didn't want to talk, or didn't want to talk to the officers about their happening, because he had been caught by the police officers with the stolen property in his hand. And why did he have the property in his hand? Because he stole it. The story about the stolen or the borrowed pants is nothing more than a red herring than expecting something to go on. On October 24th, Mr. Jacobs stole the backpack belonging to Mr. Nano, which contained the logbook, the $20 bill, and the property was found on the parking next to the movie after the time. Thank you.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you, man. It's an unusual way to start closing, but you heard my client admit to you that he misled police officers. He found himself in a tough situation. In his mind, based on past experiences and everything that happened, honestly, it's not funny, but it is the truth. And really, if you look at the facts that are presented, if you take the time to connect all the facts that we actually have, what people have failed to do is actually establish that my client intended to deprive the complaining witness of the property. We can go back and forth about identifying a backpack, books, the money. I think everybody's in agreement about that. I do agree. This case is pretty straightforward and pretty easy. There's not a lot of, did the red light turn green? What are we talking about here? Everyone's in agreement. But what we have to look at when you have a specific intent crime, and what that means is we have to, in our best ability as the fact finders, you, the jury, look at what my client's actions really reflect. Because we can't look into somebody's mind. We don't know exactly what he was thinking or what his intent was that day. But what you can do is you can look at the surrounding circumstances. Let's just use common sense. Somebody steals your wallet. It's taken around for 10 minutes. I just ask you to think about it. Is that a reasonable thing to have happen? If someone's stealing your backpack, a bright blue and black backpack, identifiable, if their intent was to keep it, what are they doing there 10 minutes later? The people with looking at these facts can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that's what he intended. We start convicting people for larceny when they're still standing on the scene from where lost property's been recovered. Again, I want to start arguing slippery slope, but come on, let's look at the surrounding circumstances. Just can't prove that that's what he intended to do that day. I find 20 bucks on the ground, someone finds 20 bucks on the ground, they probably pick it up. You find ID, you hopefully do the right thing and try to find the person. You've heard testimony, even from the complaining witness himself, who identified my client's dress and general statistics, height, size. Is the guy who came up and tugged on his shoulder. Again, I would argue looking at that, unless there's some allegations, which we haven't heard, that there was pickpocketing or some kind of crazy criminal conspiracy going on. That sure sounded like my client walked up, tried to let the complaining witness, who was clearly distraught, and we don't hold that against them in any way. I think we've all had that day. You're going through an emotional day, your mom's sick, drop your wallet, drop your ID, lose your money, you sit your backpack someplace different. It's very conceivable to understand how my client came into possession of these items. Now, I'd ask you, don't judge my client for his life circumstances or situation. Don't judge the officers for the job that they had. It's a tough one. This is a difficult situation. And that's why you as the jury have to look at everything that's presented to you today. Do the right thing and acquit my client and find that he's not guilty of the offense of larceny. Thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am.